Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the SnapVDI Virtual Lunch and Learn. It's the top of the hour here at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Tyler Newberry. I'll be your host and moderator for the SnapVDI Virtual Lunch and Learn today. With me today are a couple of presenters. We've got Senior Account Executive Andrew Lacey, as well as Solutions Engineer Matthew Tenney. Those guys will be joining us in just a few minutes, but we're going to go ahead and go over a few quick things before we get started. So, number one deals with the pizza situation. If you guys did order a pizza during your registration, it should be arriving now if it has not already. If it hasn't arrived by 1:15 Eastern Time, please let us know. You can shoot an email over to myself, and I'll put that email for you in the chat window. So shoot an email over to me if it has not arrived by 1:15 Eastern Time. Sometimes the delivery person can run just a few minutes late, so if they haven't arrived by that time, that means it's probably not late and there might be something up there. So again, let me know if it hasn't arrived by 1:15. For folks, though, on the West Coast, you know, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Nevada, if you're, like I said, in the Pacific time zone, your pizza will be arriving at 11 a.m. local time. So it'll be arriving at the end of the presentation as opposed to the beginning. That's just because all the delivery locations in your area don't open typically until 11. So that is what is up with that. Number two, we want to try to make this as interactive of a presentation for you guys as we can. So please feel free to communicate with us via the Q&A communicator located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And we'll either answer your question live on air or we'll shoot you a quick message back on the communicator and all of that kind of good stuff. And lastly, just bear with us if we ever have any technical difficulties, such as the screen becoming grainy or we lose audio for a moment. Just please bear with us. These issues typically resolve themselves within a minute or so, usually nothing major. But other than that, that's all we've got for the boring stuff. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Andrew for part one of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Tyler, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or morning if you're on the West Coast. Like Tyler said, my name is Andrew. I'm a Senior Account Executive with AMI, and today we're going to be talking about virtual desktop infrastructures, or VDI as it's possibly more commonly known. And obviously we're going to be talking about the SnapVDI product line as well. So basically the way this will work, I'll go through a quick slide deck here on VDI, SnapVDI, and then Matthew Tenney, one of our sales solutions guys for VDI, SnapVDI, will be showing a live demo of the SnapVDI management interface. So pretty interesting stuff, so hang in there. It's towards the end of the presentation, but definitely don't want to miss that. It's a pretty cool interface that we got. So quick agenda of what we're going to be covering. In the slide deck, I'll do an introduction into AMI as a company, for those of you who aren't already familiar with AMI or American Megatrends or however you know us. I'll do an an overview of the VDI technology in general. Then we're just going to basically head right into SnapVDI. So I'll do an introduction into SnapVDI itself, explain the architecture, what sets us apart from all of the other VDI solutions out there, and we'll also throw out some real-world pricing, how we stack up to the competition, give an overview of our support, our SnapVDI support. Then we're just going to wrap up with that live demo of the management interface. And as Tyler mentioned, really just please don't hesitate to ask any of these questions throughout the presentation. We're going to do our best to answer them. You can just ask the questions via the chat on WebEx there, and we'll do our best to answer these as we go along. For some reason, if we just got like too many that we can handle, or if we run out of time towards the end of the presentation, still feel free to ask, and we'll just get back to you via email with some answers there. So, introduction into AMI. Who is AMI? Also known as American Megatrends Incorporated. I'm sure a lot of you on here are already familiar with AMI, but whether or not you're familiar with us or not, I can absolutely guarantee you've used at least one of our products over the years or relied on us in some form or fashion for your IT infrastructure, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit here. But we were founded over 3 decades ago in Norcross, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, for those of you that are familiar with the Southeast over here. And we were founded in 1985, over 3 decades. Our original founder is actually our president and our CEO today. Got a worldwide presence with 12 offices across the globe. Those are going to be obviously in the United States, Germany, large office in Chennai, offices in China, Japan, Taipei, Taiwan, South Korea, but our worldwide headquarters is here just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So This isn't just where our sales and our marketing, engineering sit, they all do sit here, but most importantly, the one that I really like to emphasize and touch on the most is that this is where all of our support is located as well. So if you do happen to have a SnapVDI product, you do happen to call into our support line, you will be directly dialing engineers sitting in Atlanta, Georgia. So we don't outsource that to third parties. We don't even outsource that to our other offices in India or China or anything like that. That is all coming, all U.S.-based support out of our headquarters here in Norcross. We have over 1,400 employees worldwide, and over 80% of these are in engineering. So a lot of companies don't really release those statistics and breakdowns between the type of employees and the breakdown between subdivisions within the company. But we're very proud of that. We are an engineering-heavy company, and once again, we'll talk more about that in the coming slides and shed some more light on that. Whereas a lot of our competitors are like 50% engineering, 50% sales and marketing, we're definitely more so focused on the engineering and just ensuring that we are developing the highest quality products that we can that we offer to our customers. So I'm pretty proud of that breakdown. Between all of the divisions here at AMI, we have over one or more products in over half the computers in the world, which kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I guarantee you probably used some of our products to boot your computer or your laptop this morning, but there's basically a 100% chance that you've relied on us in some form over the years just to stay up and running in your IT infrastructure. We also have over 375 patents as a company, billions of products shipped, and also an ISO 9000 certification for those that need it. So BIOS, AMI BIOS. I'm sure that the reason that, for those of you that are already familiar with AMI, American Megatrends, this is probably the reason why. Seeing these images, if you weren't familiar, hopefully you're starting to get a little bit more familiar now. I'm willing to bet that you've seen that splash screen of American Megatrends, or if you're more of a hardware guy, maybe if you've got your hands on a lot of boards, maybe you're familiar seeing that sticker and that chip. But we are that company that developed AMI BIOS, and we developed this back in 1985, and this is undoubtedly what put us on the map. Quickly became the worldwide leader in BIOS software. This is a claim that we still have a very, very firm grasp on today. We've got over 60% of the BIOS market share worldwide, and that's also growing, which is interesting. You know, as you would think that PCs are evolving and things like that, they might start being phased out, but actually with tablets and notebooks and all the mobile devices out there, and even zero clients and thin clients like we're going to be talking about, that all require some type of a boot, actually we're growing into those markets as well. So basically everything, laptops, desktops, we're in storage arrays, you name it. Anything that needs a boot, an operating system, or anything off of a hard drive, chances are you're going to be using AMI BIOS in order to facilitate that. And RAID, Mega RAID, I'm sure a lot of you are also familiar with this as well, especially if you were in IT back in the 90s. But we launched this division in 1994, and by 96 or 97, we were the largest third-party manufacturer of RAID controller cards on the planet. Ton of attention in a short amount of time drew some of the, a ton of success in a short amount of time drew the attention of LSI Logic, which is the reason why a lot of you might know the Mega RAID card as the LSI Mega RAID controller card, is because we sold this division off to LSI Logic back in 2001. But in 2004, after a few short years, we actually brought that Mega RAID team, that engineering and development team from Mega RAID, back to AMI, and we actually leveraged that team today for our storage division, our data storage division, which is called StoreTrends. And this was founded in 2004 from the Mega RAID team, the data storage division of AMI, manufactures high-performance SSD hybrid arrays, which, for those of you that don't know, is a combination of SSDs and spinning disk drives in the same device, as well as all flash arrays, which are just all SSDs, all flash. We've got thousands of these units shipped and installed worldwide. Heavy focus on the small to medium-sized business niche. Definitely have some customers in the enterprise, but more so focused on that SMB market. But we also have a lot of these deployed for VDI environments as well, as an integrated solution, and I'll define that and talk a little bit more to that in a few slides here. But last AMI slide before we start getting into VDI is MegaRack. This is our remote access controller division, RAC. We launched this division in 1997, took on Dell as a customer the following year. for their iDRAC card. So for those of you that are familiar with the iDRAC card, it's actually, that was more or less founded on the MegaRack technology. We'd OEM'd out to those guys, and similarly when it comes to HP with their ILO card, same deal there, founded on this technology back when they had developed that. So like I said, this was the last AMI general slide, and I know it's a little bit of a thorough overview of our history, but I think that's also extremely important. I mean, when it comes to technology, especially in the technology industry, where so many companies just pop up and go under every year, every 6 months. There's always something new. So having a little bit of stability in a company, and also not to mention that we are a privately held company, we're not run by a board or anything like that, is pretty rare. So I definitely like to go through all this, not just to show you and all of you the products that we have out there and how you've used them and how you're familiar with them or used them, whether or not you're familiar with them or not, I guess would be a better way to put it. But also just to kind of show you the stability of our company, where we've been, where we're going, because I think that's also a very good indicator of the future, right? Especially in the next 3, 4, 5 years when support on products begins to reach its most critical point. You want to make sure that the company is still going to be there. It's not going to be absolved. It's not going to be purchased by another company or something crazy like that. So, understanding the landscape, let's start getting into some VDI. What is VDI? I'm sure a lot of you on the webinar today are already very familiar with VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, but this is lunch and learn, so I want to do my due diligence, bring everybody up to speed. So I'm going to start out with some of the basics here. So VDI stands for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, pretty straightforward, self-explanatory, really. It's essentially bringing virtualization to that next logical stage. So nearly everything else in the IT infrastructure has already been virtualized. Obviously, servers have been virtualized with VMware, switch has been virtualized, storage has been virtualized. If you start getting into, storage vMotion and a lot of the hypervisors are reaching down into the storage layer, a lot of the storage vendors are reaching up to the virtualization layer, so everything's being virtualized. Even lunch and learns are being virtualized. Literally everything's being virtualized. So desktops are also being virtualized, and that's what VDI is. So with VDI, the user's operating systems reside within a dedicated virtual machine VM on a central server or a cluster of servers, and the physical desktops are typically replaced with either thin or zero clients that connect the users to that central server or cluster. So simply put, it's the shift from the traditional local client-centric view to a central server-centric view, since all of your users' data, all of your users' resources, CPU, storage, everything come from a central location. So what are some of the advantages of implementing VDI? Really, we could talk about these all day. There's a tremendous amount of advantages here. But the biggest one, hands down, is going to be the ease of management. That is the absolute core value add of VDI compared to traditional desktops, traditional PCs. So it's going to be the ease of management. Since all users are centralized to a server or server cluster, you can manage all of your users, you can monitor all of your users within the VDI environment from just a single access point. That's going to be the interface, the management interface. So we'll show you a demo of ours in a bit here, but that includes the ability to do everything. It just makes management of hundreds of users just so much simpler. Mass software updates, software installations, patch updates, you can roll out these in mass, opposed to having to go to desktop to desktop to desktop. You can just do hundreds of these with basically just a few clicks of a mouse. Another advantage is going to be uptime, and it's not really intuitive to think this, but VDI solutions like SnapVDI, they're all run on enterprise hardware opposed to consumer-grade hardware that users run on for their desktops. And there is a tremendous difference. For those of you that have had to replace hard drives, consumer hard drives, and laptops and desktops, you're probably very familiar with the differences in those drives to the differences the enterprise drives that are probably in your SAN array or your NAS, or if you have direct attached storage just in your servers. Tremendous difference of performance, but definitely endurance there and reliability. So VDI, these solutions have full redundancy in the event of a failure, which translates into more uptime
and therefore translates into increased productivity as well. Power savings, another big one. It's not commonly brought up. Zero clients, like the one that we use about 5 to 7 watts of power, depending on the workload, obviously, whereas desktops use average about 50 watts. Also that depends tremendously on the workload. It's going to be very different if it's like an architecture laptop or something, or desktop or something like that with a ton of CPU, a ton of GPU, a ton of RAM. It's going to have totally different watt. But more or less, we're just going averages. So zero clients can operate at about 1/10 of what a traditional desktop would. So, 45 watts, 40 watts, it's not huge, but when you begin to extrapolate that over all of the users in your VDI, and then you begin to extrapolate that over the amount of time and the years and years that you have these guys on VDI, you really do start to see a lot of power savings rack up. Next one here is security. Opposed to traditional desktop infrastructures, you've got numerous points to protect. VDI is just a single point to secure. You can set policies and permissions at the user level as well to manage what users can and cannot access, just for additional security. We even offer the ability to lock individual USB ports. We do class-based locking, so we can protect against viruses, like user viruses, or anything that they would introduce, whether they intentionally do it or not. That can all be protected against. So security is a big one there. And then the last one is going to be versatility. So with VDI, you can create different types of users, and we'll go more into this in a bit. But the two main types of users are going to be pooled. We call them pooled. It's also called non-persistent. And then the second one's persistent. So for those of you who aren't familiar with these terms already, a pooled user or a non-persistent user is one that more or less uses the same applications day in and day out. They don't really need to add software. They don't need to customize their desktop. They don't need a desktop background. So, for example, if a pooled user downloads the software to their desktop, once they end that session and then basically log out of their session and then log back in, that application is going to be gone. So pooled users can only use the applications that are part of that template that's created by the administrator. So everything will just revert back once they log out and begin a new session. Now, all their data is going to be saved, of course. It's not like we're deleting any of their data. It's just that the settings will remain the same. So on the other hand, persistent users are basically treated just like traditional desktops in the sense that they don't have any of the software that's downloaded, any of the changes to the settings that are made, going back to like that desktop background, those would all be saved or held persistent to that desktop. So those are the two different types of users you can create in VDI, very distinct differences, also very distinct power requirements and capacity requirements, but that can all be tweaked within the management interface. You can also integrate your own devices called Bring Your Own Device. I'm sure you all are familiar with BYOD. So you can log into the VDI via tablets, laptops, basically anything that's got an internet connection. You got VPN on there. This is the most common way that remote users access VDI. So,
Andrew, how would you feel about a poll question?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. All right. So we'll go ahead and knock out a quick poll question. Now that we've learned a little bit about what VDI is, just kind of want to get a general feel for, how people, may have VDI deployed in their environment today. So just going to send out, go ahead and open the poll up here. It'll just be open for a minute. Pretty straightforward question. Do you currently have VDI deployed in your environment today? Answers are either you can do yes, exclamation point, which means you probably love it, and why wouldn't you? B, no, but we're investigating it, or C, no, and we're not really investigating it at this time. So just kind of want to see where people are at. If a lot of people do have VDI, that's great. If a lot of people don't have VDI but are interested in it, that's great as well. And also want to see, if anybody out there is just like, no, and, we don't really think it's for us. So I think it would be helpful for the presentation. And like I said, we'll just leave it open here for about another, 15 seconds or so. So feel free, go ahead and answer, maybe grab another bite of pizza, and then we'll reveal the results in just a few seconds. All right, looked like it is all done, and so looks like we had about 20% of people on the call today say that yes, they do have VDI currently deployed, which is actually a little bit higher than I thought it would be, but that's awesome. Let's see, about, help me out, Andrew, what percentage would that be?
40%?
Yeah, so about 40% say no, but they're investigating it. And then it looks like about 8% said that they are not investigating it currently. So it looks like there's a lot of folks out there who already have it and apparently are, really in love with it, and that's awesome. And then a bunch more who are investigating it. So, great poll. So we'll have another one for you guys a little bit later in the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for your participation on that. So moving on here, understanding the landscape of VDI a little bit more, two different types of VDI implementations that we see are going to be integrated and standalone. So an integrated VDI solution, this is what utilizes your existing infrastructure. So it's going to utilize your existing servers, your existing storage, whatever you have in place right now. We definitely see this as being the most common for smaller VDI deployments, where you can comfortably accommodate users on that existing hardware. It's definitely a lower risk solution. Basically, if it's just like a small deployment, 5 to 20 users or something like that, and you're not too worried about it bogging down the network overall, since you are putting it on your production environment, that's usually where we see the integrated solutions coming into play. Standalone solutions, totally different, and this is going to be entirely dedicated and specific to VDI. So the hardware, software, is only put to use for the VDI solution, a dedicated VDI solution. So these are more common, especially for like large deployments. A couple of the big advantages of a standalone VDI solution over an integrated solution, it's going to be the user management and the performance especially. With a standalone solution, it's a lot easier to determine exactly what users are using what resources and how many resources they need, since they are contained to a segmented environment. Whereas if you have an integrated solution, it's a lot more difficult to determine exactly what resources you have available overall, what users are doing what, how much they all need, especially if you have different types of users with tons of different, performance requirements and RAM requirements and core requirements and everything like that. So how many users you can maintain without bogging down that entire infrastructure and so on and so forth. So just to reiterate or reflect, I guess, a little bit on that last slide, we have a lot of StoreTrends customers, that's our data storage division, our high-performance SAN division, that are running VDI on the units. But the majority of these customers are also running their production environment off of the unit, and they've simply added like VMware Horizon View, Citrix and Desktop licenses on an as-needed basis. So that would be considered an integrated solution. If you want to have everything on a single system, including your VDI environment, we have a good bit of StoreTrends customers doing this. And we would definitely recommend this route, especially if you only have, like I said in the previous slide, just a handful of VDI users. If you only have 5 to 20 users, that's usually about what we see. So, and also if you're not really planning on expanding a whole lot in the future, then you should be good to, the system should be good, especially if it's a higher performance SSD-based system, whether it be hybrid or all flash. It should be good to handle the performance requirements of just a handful, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen users. But anything beyond that, we would definitely recommend a standalone solution like SnapVDI. SnapVDI is going to be a standalone solution, meaning this will be completely isolated, completely segmented from your production environment, databases, applications. The only things VDI utilizes are your existing network fabric, so it's not going to have its own switch. It just basically plugs into your existing network, which helps out the installation a lot, the deployment a lot. Your DHCP server, Active Directory, and firewall. Everything else is basically just completely standalone from both the hardware and a software perspective. So now we're going to start digging a little bit into SnapVDI, components, architecture, everything along those lines. There's 5 main components that make up SnapVDI listed out here. And I got slides dedicated to each of these, 6 if you count the Microsoft. I'll talk about that as well. But I got slides for each of these. I'll cover them in the coming up slides here. But just to summarize them real quick, Spark, this is our patented caching acceleration software that guarantees high performance. It works, basically, it's like a broker between our RAM layer on our server and our SSD layer on our storage. and I'll talk about that. But guarantees high performance, high quality user experience for all of your users. SnapVDI Manager, it's our interface that allows the administrator to manage and monitor everything from just a single pane of glass, that single access point. SnapVDI servers, this is 2 servers in high availability for complete redundancy. And SnapVDI storage, that's a fault-tolerant storage console that stores all of your users' data, also redundant as well. And then the Zero clients, these are the end-user devices that include our patented View firmware, SnapVDI View firmware. And then the last component is Microsoft. We do utilize Microsoft licenses, and the majority of the customers that we have on this usually have at least one of the Microsoft licenses already in place. We don't offer that as a default with our solution because we don't want to essentially penalize our customers for having to repurchase the licenses they already have. But we can, if you don't have any of these and you just want just a complete deployment, ready to deploy solution, we can put these onto the system prior to shipping it out and have all of that pre-installed and ready to go for you. So before I jump into each one of these, I got a quick screenshot of the architecture here and a visual representation of what we're working with. And the way I usually explain this is starting from the bottom and working my way up to the top. So starting essentially at the simplest, and then it gets a little bit more complicated as you work your way up. So at the bottom we have what's called the SnapVDI brick. And the brick includes the storage appliance and then the 2 SnapVDI servers in high availability. Then we have the Microsoft Enterprise cluster software running on the servers. Our SnapVDI Manager then resides on top of that Microsoft layer and comes pre-installed on the system. That's free of charge. It's not, the management interface isn't an additional add-on item or anything like that. And this is where you're going to do everything. This is where you're going to create and deploy all of your VMs. We're going to do all your software updates, everything, manage everybody. SnapVDI does plug into your existing network and then connects SnapVDI to your Zero clients, and then you can also differentiate between pooled and persistent users on that level. So pretty straightforward, but entirely comprehensive. And as I mentioned a minute ago, starting to get into the components here, the servers and storage make up what we call the SnapVDI brick. The 2 servers, these are that are in the brick, are in an HA configuration for complete redundancy, so we don't have any single points of failure in the event of a hardware issue or something like that. Ensures all of your users are up and running. And also, since the servers are fault tolerant with one being active and one being passive, we can actually upgrade servers with 0 downtime, 0 maintenance windows. And we can do this by first upgrading the passive server and essentially performing a failover, upgrading failover to the now upgraded controller, then upgrading the now passive server, and then failing back over. So you don't have any downtime, nothing like that for hardware maintenance, software updates, and even hardware upgrades we can do on the field. If you need like a boosted CPU or anything like that on the server side, we can do that on the fly. And also, since these are entirely fault tolerant, they are active passive. We're not doing any type of performance distribution between the 2 servers. So if you have 200 VDI users, it's not like we're putting like 100 on the server and then 100 on the other server. So in the event that one of these goes down, then essentially your 200 VDI users are going to start seeing performance issues. We're actually just running everything off of a single server, and the other one is just entirely idle, entirely passive in the event that anything goes down. So none of your users are going to see any type of performance degradation in the event that one of those has a power issue or anything like that. And then it comes to storage. Storage components is the central repository for all of your user data. This is a dual controller, redundant, RAID-protected array, also supports snapshots and replication for further data protection. We support replication between separate VDI bricks. So, for example, if you have a few branch offices and each one's got their own brick, you can replicate between them for additional redundancy, for DR, just protect against a complete site disaster. And they don't have to just be replication between SnapVDI bricks. You can also do backups on site, just like a file server. We can facilitate that very easily, so just making sure that all of your user data is fully protected. And also all the hardware, storage consoles, storage appliance, field replaceable, hot swappable, so if you need to replace a drive, you need to replace a power supply, cooling fans, all this can be done on the fly. Don't need any disruption or maintenance windows. And Spark. Our Spark software is
really the primary differentiator between SnapVDI and other VDI solutions. This is a patented caching acceleration algorithm that is utilizing more or less auto-tiering functionality. So opposed to the traditional caching that you're probably more familiar with on the RAM side on your servers that typically follows the first in, first out methodology, the Spark, our Spark software actually monitors how frequently the data is accessed, does this at the block level, and it keeps this data, what we call hot data, hot user data, on the cache layer, which is our RAM layer, on our server. So it's as close to the users as it can possibly be on the RAM of the servers, and it's on RAM, which is faster than spinning disk, faster than SSD even. So, and this really just ensures that all of your users are receiving extreme performance, especially on the data that they're accessing most frequently, as well as an unmatched experience. But it's very similar to auto-tiering technology. If you are familiar with your SAN or your NAS, chances are, especially if you have different types of drives in there, if you have different, maybe you have 15K SAS and you have 7.2K SAS or NL SAS in the same device, or if you have SSD with spinning disk in the same device, it's probably also going to be utilizing some type of auto-tiering technology. So somewhat similar to that, but a little bit more geared towards VDI particularly. Some of the highlights from Spark are, of course, the performance. That's the big one they're shooting for. Faster than desktop, entire VDI infrastructure. We want that booting within seconds. Immediate access to applications. Far less physical storage because we are doing data deduplication. It's being done on the cache layer. Faster video provisioning and cloning, and all of these ultimately translate into that improved user productivity and experience. And what we're targeting is better than desktop. So manager, where the magic happens. This is the interface that we'll show in a few minutes. And this interface is what allows you to manage everything. So all of your users, all of your VDI users from that single point. This is where you manage and monitor users, provision system resources, per user requirements. You can carve out, I want this group of users, or basically this cluster of users, or pool, I think is what they're called, to have this many cores or virtual cores, to have this much virtual capacity, so we can really carve out. We virtualize all of the hardware, specific hardware components, so we can carve that out on an as-needed basis to your users. You can mass install your software, mass install your patches, create desktop templates for your different types of users. So, for example, if you're like a school system, you might have one template that's for all of your users. You might have a template that's for your teachers. You might have a separate templates for your administrative staff. You can really break this out and roll it out very, very, very simply, especially when compared to a traditional PC model. And the SnapVDI Manager, it can be accessed either locally or remotely, all from that single interface. And last component of the SnapVDI solution is going to be the Zero Client. And this is the end user device that typically is what's replacing your bulky desktop towers. And the whole purpose of this thing is to route your user to what would be their desktop tower, their CPU, their RAM, their GPU, if they have that, that's located on the central servers or the server cluster. So our Zero Client operates at about 5 to 7 watts, depending on the load on it, of power compared to the 50 watts that are needed by the average desktop tower. And they also include our own firmware. It's called View, and this does work with our Spark technology to ensure high performance, basically a better broker, better communicator between the user and the most frequently accessed data that's being hit on the server side. But it also allows us to do some cool stuff like USB port locking, that class-based port locking that I was talking about. We can actually lock individual USB ports, which is great for security, great for virus protection, just making sure no external threats are brought in by any of your users, hopefully not intentionally, but just a good safeguard there. Another cool feature we have is our power on, network power on and power off, where you can schedule your Zero Clients to power on and off at certain times of the day. This is naturally just going to further increase your power savings. Let's say you start at your business hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You might want to schedule these things to power on at 7:45 in the morning and automatically power off at 5:30 in the afternoon. Obviously, unless somebody is currently using it, you don't want to shut it off on them if they're in the middle of work. But pretty cool stuff there just for increased power savings. It can be all scheduled through the management interface. We also do support dual monitors. Pretty much half to this point. I think the vast majority of workers have dual monitors now. We support both VGA and DVI connections. These can be used simultaneously if needed. Another thing worth noting here is that while we do provide our own Zero clients, SnapVDI does function with other clients as well from other vendors. So we see this very commonly. People may be working with an integrated VDI solution where they're kind of running all of their users off of their existing infrastructure. They've replaced the VDI users' desktops and laptops with Zero clients or thin clients, but now they've more or less outgrown their integrated solution. They're looking to move more towards a standalone like SnapVDI, but they have all these Zero clients. They want to repurpose them, so we can absolutely work with that. So if you have an existing VDI implementation, let's say you got some ProLogics are pretty common, Dell Ys are definitely very common. If you got some of those lying around, those will operate with SnapVDI. So, or if you would like to repurpose desktops that are already in your environment, you can do that as well.
You went ahead and answered the question. We had a question come in about if these will work with other vendors, and want to throw in there the repurposing desktop option as well. So
bingo.
That is perfect. So long story short, they will work, SnapVDI Brick will work with other vendors like Dell Ys and repurposing your desktops and all that.
Great question. Okay, clairvoyant.
Perfect. Yeah.
So if you got those lying around, they'll absolutely work with us. And if you got desktops lying around, you want to repurpose them, you're not going to need really any of the hardware in that desktop anymore. I mean, you can still keep it in there, but we're just going to be utilizing it as a route to the VDI solution. So, but all this being said, our Zero clients were specifically engineered to function with SnapVDI as a whole, so they will deliver a little bit higher performance because of that relationship that we have with our view firmware on the Zero client and our Spark technology on the SnapVDI solution on the servers. So a little bit higher performance, a little bit more functionality, but we will operate with the Zero clients you have in hand right now. And conversely, on the other side, we also offer the Zero clients separate of the VDI solution. So let's say that you are looking to do an integrated, maybe a little bit too small right now for a complete standalone solution, and you just want to get some Zero clients or replace some of those desktops for some of your users. We do offer our Zero clients separate of the SnapVDI solution. So if you'd like to talk to us about getting some of those, we actually offer POCs of those free of charge for 30 days. You can just test one of these things out free of charge to make sure it's going to work well for you. And while we've been talking Zero clients, you might be wondering about thin clients. I don't have a slide on that, but I can tell you that they will be available shortly, and we're working on those right now. And last component of SnapVDI is going to be the Microsoft licenses. So we do require external Microsoft licenses, which we've listed out here. This is just an example. Microsoft licenses have gone a little bit haywire from moving from 2012 to 2016. We made the jump from being either server basis to a core basis, and since the CPUs within our various products, our various SnapVDI bricks, vary greatly depending on the amount of users you need on the brick, obviously core count is going to increase as well, so that's going to change the licenses. But for all intents and purposes, there are 4 licenses in total. 2 of those are going to be dedicated to the servers. That's going to be the enterprise server licenses, which differ depending on the CPU core, and then the software assurance pack. And the other 2 are going to be user-specific. We have the RDS license and the VDA license from Microsoft. Now, we can provide the entire solution that includes everything if you don't already have them, but we don't include them by default in our solution. I hinted at this earlier. There's 2 main reasons for this. First one's being that most of our customers already have at least 1 or 2 of these in their licenses in their environment, so we don't want to force you to purchase them again or cause any confusion where you can leverage it, because if you do already have that, you can leverage that in the SnapVDI solution, just to clarify. Second reason is going to be pricing. So a lot of the organizations that we work with, especially nonprofits, anything in the public sector, education probably is the absolute best. I feel like Microsoft will pay you to take their licenses if you're in education. You can probably get better pricing from Microsoft than what we can get, and then have to put it in our solution for you. So we don't want to penalize any of y'all that can get better pricing from Microsoft, pay more for your licenses, or make them pay for the same licenses again. So once again, if you want all the licenses included, you just don't want to touch anything at all, just ready to deploy, whatever, we can put all this together for you in-house and then ship it to you, but it does not include those by default. So some of the solutions, let's talk about the actual physical models that are offered. We now have 4 models of SnapVDI bricks. We've got the B100, B150, B250, and B300. So B100 is going to manage up to 100 users, B150 up to 150 users. These are knowledge users, by the way. So knowledge user is going to be your typical office user. Task user is going to be extremely light user. Power user is going to be like CAD, SolidWorks, Revit, basically any, maybe like MATLAB, like any very high-end user, just to clarify on that. But B250 is up to 250 users, and then B300 is up to 300 users. Pretty straightforward. And once again, each brick is comprised of 3 total, a total of 3 units, 2 servers and 8 and the dual controller redundant storage appliance. And each storage appliance is in a hybrid configuration as well. We got 4 SSDs and 8 spinning disk drives just for increased performance on the storage layer as well. And we also have a modular expansion path. So if you have 550 users, you could have a B300 and a B250, or if you have 400 users, you could have a B300 and B100. Essentially, well, with the bricks that we have, any increments that we have, we can hit more or less any increment of 50 users after 100. But we can also further refine that with the amount of zero clients that we provide. So if you get a B250 and you only have 200 users, you know, you don't have to get 250 zero clients. You can just get as many zero clients as you need and just add them on an as-needed basis, one by one, as you grow or as you migrate more users to the VDI. So what are some of the advantages of SnapVDI, specifically over other VDI solutions? First one here is going to be seamless integration. SnapVDI, to the best of my knowledge, is the only complete turnkey, all-in-one software, hardware, ready-to-deploy solution that just plugs into your existing network. It's just one solution from one vendor. Multi-vendor solutions, on the other hand, they can get very messy, especially when it comes to our support. You've probably had a scenario when you have a call or have an issue and you call into VMware and they're, or I don't want to sling butt, when you call into your virtualization vendor and they might point the finger at storage, and then your storage is going to blame your switches, and your switches is going to blame your servers, and you basically just have this vicious circle of finger pointing, whereas nothing is getting done. So we completely bypass that by being a complete solution. There's just a single installation. If you got an issue, there's a single support call. We don't have a finger to point to anybody else. Multi-vendor solutions are also almost always more expensive, standalone, so we're just comparing apples to apples, and we'll take a look at that in a second here, but basically always more expensive, and they're never purpose-built for VDI. So while some of the components basically always on the software side, like Horizon View and Citrus Zen Desktop, are specifically for VDI, which is great, they are almost always paired with commodity server and storage hardware or an existing hardware infrastructure that's not specifically tuned or geared just for VDI. And the next benefit is going to be the performance, and this is largely due to our proprietary Spark caching software that we covered earlier. The entire solution was built, purpose-built for VDI, just from the ground up, and as with any other IT product or really any other products in general, when all of the components are just made to work together, they were made with the intention of understanding one another for the sole purpose. It just inherently generates and guarantees higher performance and higher reliability across the system as a whole. And the last benefit here is going to be the value. I'll compare our pricing to other VDI solutions in the next couple of slides, and you'll see we'll beat other vendor solutions by at least 15%. We also offer free POC systems, so if you'd like to test and evaluate the equipment in-house for 30 days, up to 60 days prior to purchasing, we can do so at zero risk, zero investment. Just make sure it's the right fit for you. And for our POC units, we actually send you a brand new system, so if you do decide to purchase the unit at the end of the evaluation period, you can just roll into the unit as your production VDI environment, opposed to having to rip out a demo unit, ship it back, and then have the new one shipped out and the new one installed. We just avoid all that, and they very rarely come back. We're very confident in our products, so we'll just send you a new one and hope that it works for you and hope that it sticks.
typically include 10 zero-client star POCs as well. So yeah, if you're interested in doing POC, feel free to reach out to us. Be more than happy to speak with you about that. Talk a little bit about how we stack up to the competition, and I know I'm running a little bit on time, and I don't want to steal a whole lot of time from Matthew on the management interface, so I might jump through this a little bit quickly. But the next couple slides here are just screenshots comparing pricing between us and other VDI solutions, standalone VDI solutions that have been built out. And first one's going to be a VDI solution comprised of pure storage with storage components. It's an all-flash array, VMware for the virtualization, Cisco for the servers. And while we got some vendor names up here, I mean, this is a real-world build-out. You can more or less replace. I mean, it doesn't have to be pure storage. I mean, EMC is going to be, if you got a comparable unit, it's going to be more or less around the same price. So this is real-world stuff. You can see they both have the same type of hardware. Both got servers. Both got storage. Either have zero clients or thin clients in the solution. They're using VMware virtualization software while we're running on Microsoft. But competing solutions, price noticeably higher. It's going to be about 20% higher. You can save almost $47,000 with the SnapVDI solution. And similar deal here, except we're up against VMware and SimpliVity. For those of you who don't know, I think HP bought them not too long ago. It's a hyper-converged vendor, meaning it's server and storage, compute, and then capacity in essentially the same appliance. But similar to the last slide, regardless of whether we're looking at SimpliVity or Scalar and Nutanix, which are some other hyper-converged guys, the pricing will be more or less the same. All other things equal, SnapVDI cost per user is about 15% less than the solution, even though we're using 3-year support pricing compared to their 1 year. So for this one, you'd be saving upwards of $40,000 on that one. I know that these are based off of 150 users. I know not everybody's got exactly 150 users. That'd be very coincidental. Yeah, if you would like to receive actual pricing for the VDI solution, you can go to snapvdi.com and the Contact Us bar at the top, and there's a drop-down for price quote generator, or you can just go to snapvdi.com/contact us. Y'all can see the hyperlink there. But basically, just give us some basic inputs on how many users you need, the breakdown between persistent and non-persistent users, and we will actually send you out a quote within 24 business hours for the SnapVDI solution. So if you're budgeting, or maybe you're looking to pull the trigger on a VDI solution pretty quickly here, whatever it may be, this is absolutely a free tool and very hassle-free. So we're pretty open with our pricing, and it's definitely an advantage that we have on our side. So really can't emphasize this enough. If you like pricing on SnapVDI, snapvdi.com, contact us, price per generator. We'll get working on that as soon as possible and have it out to you via email before you know it. Last thing before I hand things over to Matthew is just our support. So wrapping up, one call, that's all. Compared to other VDI solutions, our support is a one-stop shop. All of our support is based out of our headquarters here in Atlanta, so we're not going to outsource this to any of our international offices, just everything coming from our headquarters. Zero downtime maintenance, software upgrades. Our support terms range from 1 to 5 years, 1, 3, and 5 years. We can also co-term, so if you like just everything, all of your IT stuff, all of your hardware renewals, all of your support renewals, or sorry, software renewals, hit at the same time. We can co-term to that if you'd like to make it easier. Very flexible there. So.
Cool. Yeah, as we're doing this transition, let's go ahead and answer a couple of questions that have come in over the Q&A communicator. Matthew, I think this will be kind of a question for you, so you might have to pull a little double duty as you're setting up here.
All righty.
But one of our contacts on the event today, Brad, asked, how do you deal with USB-connected receipt printers or signature pads? They currently use those types of USB device technologies, I guess, in their current desktop. So I guess that relates more to the zero clients as to, you know, can we use those types of devices?
Absolutely. We can go ahead and load those drivers into our solution so that we can fully support them.
Okay. Perfect. Just reading, just kind of looking through a couple more here. If a person was working on a desktop, I think this kind of will go into a persistent versus non-persistent debate. But if somebody was working on a desktop, one of their users, could they do things like set up icons and favorites and things like that will be there the next time they log in, or is it every time they log out that stuff's just blown away?
Absolutely. We support both solutions, actually, depending on their needs. And I'll go more in depth on those options as I go through the live demo here today. But yeah, we can have it created similar to like a library or educational system, to where every time the user logs out, it'll revert back to its initial image, or we can disable the rollback feature so that every consecutive login that they have will retain some level of the changes they made in their environment.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that info.
Alrighty. If that's it for questions for the time being.
Sorry.
And I'll go ahead and jump into today's demo. I want to kind of go through our manager, show you how easy it is to create, in this case, a brand new environment and solution for your existing infrastructure, kind of show you the steps and life cycle of deployment, as well as some managerial steps as well. So diving right in, the first thing we'll see is our dashboard, split into a few different levels. Here we can kind of gauge our two-server solution, make sure that it's successfully deployed and in an active-passive relationship, as well as how many resources we have available in the system for additional deployment. Below that, we have our control panel. This is one of the biggest features for our manager, is the number of wizards we have. So deployment is extremely easy. We handle everything from uploading all of your ISO images to creating your virtual machines, templates, as well as the collections that will be spawned from those templates. We also have a master wizard here on the far left, which goes through all the steps in one go, and we'll be going through that here in a second. Below that, we have our currently deployed solutions, different pools and desktops and offices that we already have out in the field, and a few quick tools, including adding additional VMs or changing the policies or users that have the rights to integrate with these collections. And lastly, at the bottom, I've triggered a few dummy events just so you can see how this populates, but we track over 2,000 different thresholds in our environment to keep you up to date with the goings-on in your system, make sure everything is running at peak performance. With that said, let's go ahead and go through the life cycle of deployment. It's a very simple process. The first thing we want to do is go ahead and select our operating system that we'll be using for our template. In this case, I've grabbed our Windows 7 ISO and already created the profile for it, so the product key and a few other settings are already applied. Click Next, and with that set, we now need to set the resources, how much hardware we want to allocate to all of these users. Here we have the industry standards for task, knowledge, and power. Task being for smaller users, typically call centers or people who interact with documents or emails specifically. Above that, knowledge, people who are scanning the internet or using moderate application intensities. And then lastly, the power users. These are more of your CAD users, your SolidWorks users, things of that nature. We also have the ability to customize our hardware profile as well. This allows us to do certain things such as select dynamic memory allocation so that we can give users additional resources if they have large spikes of activity. In this case, let's say that on startup they start with 2 gigs and they can scale upwards to 8 if necessary at a buffer rate of about 10%. Of course, the resources are allocated immediately if they are available. Once the user comes down from that peak, it'll buffer back down to our minimum of 2 gigs. Bring those resources up for other users. All right, with that set, we'll go ahead and select our administrator to deploy our virtual machine before it becomes a template. Let's go ahead and put my password in and name our virtual machine. We'll say that this is our Windows 7 solution. Click Next. Give us a quick rundown of everything we've done, as well as the ability to go ahead and move straight into the next step, which is creating the template from the VM that we've just customized, given an OS and hardware specifications. So we can go into this at any time after the VM has been created, add our applications and save it to the template. And then next, we have the collection. With the template in progress of being created, this is where we take multiple copied images from this template and spawn them as virtual desktops for users to access. So,
oh, sorry, I was going to hop in there with a quick question.
Oh,
we got from inside. Is there a minimum bandwidth? This came from Dathan on the communication line. But is there a minimum bandwidth that SnapVDI requires per user, throughput-wise, I guess?
Not necessarily. The minimum requirements are drastically low. A lot of infrastructures already have something in place, but as far as the tunnel, we're talking about maybe 1 to 5 megabyte lines.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Great question. All right. So as I was saying, we have our template created. In this case, it's time to create our collection. So let's say we have a new remote office going up. So we'll say that this is our remote office number 3 for their sign-on. Well, let's see, as far as their prefix goes, let's just say RO3 for quick reference. And next, what type of collection do we want? Do we want to do a pooled collection similar to what you'd see in education or a library, where the users log in, and when they log out, it reverts back to its initial deployment, or personalized, which is something you typically see compared to your own home computer, where all the changes you make are retained throughout the process. So in this case, let's do pooled, and let's go ahead and give this collection 10 users. We'll make sure that the user profile is created, so that each user logging in will have an allocated space, a share, if you will, for them to store their personal documentation or projects that they might be working on. And we'll say we want them to have maybe 35 gigs each. Of course, we can't fully implement your own storage solution. If you have one in place now, we can add their share directly into the template image so that they have not only the space allocated on our SnapVDI brick, but also whatever you currently have in place. And we'll also enable rollback so that when they log out, everything will revert back. Last step, we are tightly integrated with Active Directory, so we can select all of the users that will have the right to access these virtual machines upon deployment. So I'll grab some arbitrary names from our list here and save. These will be the users that have the right to access, and click Next. Finally, a summary of all of our steps that we've implemented, running on Windows 7, how many resources they'll have each, as well as the template that we've created that we can go into and add all of our applications and settings, as well as the collection information, such as the name, how many we're deploying, and how large of a storage space that they have per user. Click Finish. The process will begin. We can track its deployment across our task manager, as well as see it in our wizard console to see its progresses. And once that solution is done, we can go into our Desktop Explorer, see our completed collections, as well as all the virtual machines that are umbrellaed underneath them, and have plenty of different options, including adding users if we have a new employee added to the group, as well as provisioning tools such as applying new firmware releases or updating software that's been loaded onto this virtual machine. The benefits of having it in a pooled collection over being a personal collection is the power we have to keep everything in sync. We can update every single virtual machine underneath this pool in one single swoop. Aside from that, we also have full control over the clients deployed in the field, our zero clients, that is, and the user policies that are applied to them. So here we can add different administrative rights or guest privileges to our different users in our Active Directory, and we can define with more detail the rights that they have. In this case, with our 0 clients, we can go in here and have a closer look where we can enable and disable a myriad of different features inside the solution, including disabling USB so that no one can plug in a rubber duck, in this case, or steal your data. Just an added layer of security here. And I know we're getting a little close to the 2 o'clock mark. I want to be conscious of your time, so I'll go ahead and wrap things up with one last feature that we have built into our solution, and that is having everything implemented directly into this user interface, including the ability to set up alerts, as well as managing all of your different licensing that you have applied to across all of your VMs. So we can keep track of what's deployed out in the field, when they expire, as well as where they're deployed to.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Matthew. We're going to do one last quick question that just came in a moment ago, and then we'll wrap it up. What protocol do you guys use for the thin clients, the 0 clients?
We use RDP.
RDP. Good deal. Well, I think that's all the time we have today. We really want to thank everybody for participating in the event today. It was a pleasure presenting to all of you, and we hope that you come back for a future event and check out more of our webinar series. Like Andrew alluded to earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us via the website. That's usually the easiest way to. If your questions are pretty general, feel free to hit us up on the Contact Us form on SnapVDI.com. If you're a little bit further along the process, would like a quote for VDI, check out the price quote generator feature on the SnapVDI.com webpage, and we can help you guys out that way as well. But if we can be of assistance in any way at all, please let us know. But for myself, Andrew, and Matthew, thank you again so much for your time this afternoon, and we look forward to speaking with you all again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.